that reminder. All right, we are recording. Speaking of that, I did upload yesterday's to our YouTube playlist. And that playlist is unlisted. And so I've just sent you guys a link in email to the to that YouTube playlist. And so each day I will add the recording to it. And you can go back and review. I mean, I know there's a lot of like talk in between, but you can kind of fast forward to a certain section because I feel like I'm going to probably go through some things kind of fast. So hopefully that helps. And keep in mind in the presentation, there are several links and videos that you can kind of refresh your memory on. I live by a YouTube video tutorial, for example, a couple of things that we're doing today. You guys will just have to excuse me because I don't use Google. Well, I don't use some of the features in Sheets often enough. So I have to refresh my memory on them. But I will say Google Sheets is one of those tools that, although I didn't use it much as a classroom teacher, as I progressed in other jobs, I really became a fan on it because like I told you before, I don't like math. And Google Sheets does the math for me, so I really love that about it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and address something that we were talking about before we actually started, and Christy had a question regarding the test. Now, I mentioned to you guys that we are kind of going through, Google is going through a transition right now with the testing service. That their old testing service was called Criterion, and you saw that when I showed you the voucher page yesterday. There are two types of vouchers. So they're moving over to ProctorU, and our test slide actually have, I think, ProctorU as the link. So Christy asked if we can use either platform. And the reason she asked that is because there's a lot of talk about ProctorU having some issues. And that is something that we've been talking about. The Google trainers on the ATEM staff have been talking about. It's a hot topic in some of the Google groups and in the emails that are coming through for trainers. And so I did check with Brooke Veazey, who's from with Montevallo, and she has been doing multiple virtual boot camps over the last month. She said that Criterion is supposed to go away after July 1st, meaning that you could test on the old platform. Now we are hearing that they may extend that because ProctorU is still having so many issues. So what that means is that if you are thinking about putting off the test, I would not put it off past July 1st. And I can try to email you and let you know if there is a change there. But the recommendation I would give is, because ProctorU has been giving people issues, take the test on the old site. And like I said, I'll update that test slide, make sure it takes you to that Criterion website where you take the Google test. I mean, Google's been using that particular testing platform for years, so it is tried and true for them. So anyway, I will update that and just recommend to you that you spend some time studying those units, go back over what we have learned, and go ahead and plan on trying to test before July. So any questions on that? Any thoughts? And we'll talk more about the test as we go through the week, but I will tell you this, I don't ever want to scare people about the test, but I will tell you it is not easy. It is a difficult test. It is a scenario-based test, so it is going to take a lot of reading and a lot of critical thinking. Many times if it's multiple choice, it's going to say at the top with the question 4. And that 4 would indicate that of all of these possible choices, you have to select 4. So be looking for that when you're testing, and just know that at the top, it will tell you how many choices you're supposed to choose. I didn't know that when I took the test. And so there's no telling how many of those that I missed because I just picked 2. So at least they tell you out of 6, 4 of these are going to be correct. So just know that this is a hard test. It's a timed test. And the last thing anybody needs is for the technology behind the test to be glitchy. So I'll definitely give you the link to the old test site. And hopefully you will not have any problems. Of course, I'm hoping that they knock out all the kinks on the new test site, because I have a level 2 boot camp coming up mid-July, and I would like to be able to tell those people that they could be confident going through ProctorU. All right, so I'm going to go back and share my screen. I posted in our chat the link for the presentation and for the document, for the attendance document. So hopefully if you are, there we go. Hopefully, if you're on the presentation, you were able to use that table of contents slide and able to go right here to this particular slide. I tried to put a different colored strip for each day. So this one is green. Mark your attendance for today. If you have not, click on this link and go to it. It's just a very simple form. And notice that I tried to make it easy for myself. I went ahead and put all of the days. Now don't go through the form today and mark all the days, because when I look at today, I'm going to see that. So just mark for today, please. And then each day we will add to that attendance form. So just a recap and review, Google Docs, Google Drive, and Google Keep is what we talked about yesterday. Some of the things in Google Docs, I think that are second nature to you. Some of the tools in Google Docs may not be second nature. One of the things that I did not talk about yesterday, and I did want to talk about today, and we just talked about doing this, so I'm gonna practice what I preach, docs.new. And on here, I was mentioning add-ons, and I'm going to talk about those just briefly too. But I did not really talk about voice typing. This is one of my favorite tools on here. And basically, you will have to give permission for your computer for use of the mic. But when you click it, it types everything that you say, period. And you can also put the grammar in there as well, exclamation point. And you click back off of that. Now, here is an interesting feature that I had not used before. And so when I was training, somebody said, wait a minute, does that mean if I speak it, it is going to translate it in a different text? And I said, well, let's find out. So it types everything that you say, and you can also put the grammar in there as well. That does not look like Spanish. So, I'm not really sure how to use that tool, and maybe I did it. Maybe if I was speaking in Spanish, it would translate it to English. So anyway, that was an ultimate fail. Testing 1, 2, testing. Well, I don't know who Justin is, but evidently that is not working. So we're going to just stick with English. And I'm going to close that out. Voice typing is a lot of fun. Your students will have fun with it too. Once they figure out voice typing, they will start like recording you and transcribing what you say, which is kind of annoying. But what I love about voice typing, I think it's very unique feature for some of your second language students, also for some of your students who struggle with keyboarding, and then some of your special ed students that have some needs there. They can speak things, go back in and correct their grammar. So I really like the voice tools. And I did want to mention add-ons. Now, if you're not using add-ons, and add-ons are not really a part of the test, but I did want to make sure that if you haven't used add-ons, see, I'm kind of addicted to add-ons, just like I am with extensions. But if you go down here to the bottom, you can actually click Get Add-ons. If you don't have any, you'll just have that Get Add-ons. And here's where you can add on some really great features. And so you can either go through here and see something that you might like. I mentioned EasyBib as a citation tool that I really like in Google Docs. But there are a bunch of other ones that I think are super useful. Word cloud generator is one that you might be interested in, especially if you are a Chromebook school, and some of the word cloud generators are won't work on a Chromebook. But you can look through some of these. They're really, really helpful. Does anybody want to unmute their mic if you are an add-on user and mention one that you like, or put it in the chat to let us know an add-on that you think is really useful for docs? I will say I've used the Avery Labels one a lot. There are some rubric makers here. There are some specific to grading. You're going to see some specific to math. So all of these I think are really useful. But when it comes to add-ons, extension, or anything like that, my recommendation is that you check out the reviews and how many users. Kind of like an Amazon purchase. This will tell you how many people are using or have downloaded it. And this will tell you the average rating of that. And so when I click on it, it's going to show me those numbers again. It's going to show me some screenshots, a little overview, and then I can see any of the reviews that people have given for this. And sorry.
Brandy, I've used Dr. Form quite a bit.
Yes.
Forms is my favorite Google product, so I do use Dr. Form quite a bit. It's good for assessment.
Yes, this Doc2Form tool, and there's another add-on called Automagical Forms, I believe. And I actually have a video on using these tools. It is super helpful if you are using forms for quizzes. So yeah, definitely. We're going to talk about forms today, and maybe we'll revisit this add-on for that. It is really useful. All right, I think that was really one of the only things I wanted to mention here that I didn't mention yesterday. When it comes to Google Drive, I mean, I think we're all so used to Google Drive, probably none of that information was new to you. The one thing I would recommend if you are using this heavily with school or personal use, I recommend all of these different Google apps on your mobile device. Just from a standpoint of keeping up with your stuff and using it again or having it on the fly. It is so helpful. My husband is an Android phone guy and I'm an iPhone girl. And so just teaching him how all of these are kind of intertwined with his Android device has been really interesting, because he still tries to email people like big files. And I'm like, you have Google Drive. You can literally just drop it there. So I would advise anybody to utilize Drive on their mobile device just for storage. All right, so today we're going to talk about Google Sheets. I mentioned this before. This is not something that I used a lot when I was teaching, other than kind of creating. I'm not a big fan of using tables in docs, so I would make spreadsheets. And a lot of times that was because I liked the sorting ability in Google Sheets. And so I've got some links on here that I wanted to show you. First of all, this is a phenomenal slideshow tutorial. I did not create this, but what I love about it is it dives very deeply into a lot of the features of Google Sheets. And it uses screenshots, arrows, annotations. I say it's my dummy-proof tutorial. So anytime that I am trying to explain something to someone, or I'm looking for a specific step to do in Google Sheets, I love going through this slideshow. So notice that it gives you all of these labels: how to create a new sheet, different options, your toolbar. It tells you your limits, up to 200 sheets per workbook. I don't know that I've ever needed that, or 4 million cells, but it's good to know. And so you can go through there. It goes through the file menu. So everything I talk about here, this slideshow is going to talk about it much better and with greater detail. So to me, when you are studying for the test, in most cases, Google Sheets is one of the most intimidating tools for teachers in general. So I always say, go to this slideshow, review it, get a spreadsheet and play with it and practice some of these things. And that's going to really build your confidence. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I did want to show you how extensive it is, how great it is about labeling things. Now, keep in mind, all Google tools go through revisions, and there may be something that's a little different in this slideshow because it is, I know, at least a year or two old. So just know there may be some differences, but by and large, most of the things you're going to need to know in a level 1 and more are in this slideshow. So I don't want us to get too far off the path, but know that this link is fabulous. And so I'm going to go ahead and open a Google Sheet. And like I said before, I'm going to go to my iPad here and look at this checklist while I am doing this so that I cover everything. So how many people use Google Sheets fairly regularly? Either put it in the chat, yes, or raise a hand, or give me a shout through your mic and say, I use it a lot. All right, so we have a few people using it. I noticed Joy raised her hand, and she is in the library, and I can imagine there are probably numerous ways that she uses it because she does have a budget and things like that. So Joy, is that kind of what you're using it for?
I do use it for budgeting type things, but I really use it more for inventory type things. I tend to generate a spreadsheet from my library software, whether it's the technology inventory or some other kind of list that I'm working on, and then I'll dump it into Google Sheets so that I can sort it and rearrange it, and that I use it more for that really than probably the budgeting.
Yeah, and I would say from a teacher standpoint, the amount of organization you have to do in your class, a Google spreadsheet really lends itself to help organize you and keep up with stuff. Whether it is your book collection in your classroom, checking out textbooks or materials to students, a spreadsheet really should be your go-to for that. And if it's not, I hope that when we're done talking about it, it will give you some more confidence in using your spreadsheet. So I'm going to start out by just doing a new spreadsheet. And just basically talk about the kind of vocabulary of a spreadsheet. And so you will notice here that I've got my columns and my rows. I know that probably sounds simplistic, but as we go, you need to make sure that you know this. And then these are called cells. Now, when I type something into a cell, notice I'm going to see it here, and I'm also going to see it here. So that is where your formulas and your text can be added. So I can add formulas here directly, and it will, so either of these places that I type information, I'm going to see it in both locations. So when I move to another cell, if I go up here and type, it's going to appear in that cell. So you have those two options. That is helpful if you are writing something really long, you're putting in a long formula. Sometimes people prefer to type up here. Now, I know this is not the official vocabulary for Google Sheets, but I call this the magic square up here in the corner. Okay, and here's what I mean. When I click on that square in the corner, it selects the entire sheet. So if I'm making changes to my sheet, it affects everything in the sheet. Okay, so if I want my columns to be wider, you would hover over and grab and pull that column. Notice that it divides all the columns evenly. This is a huge time saver if you're a visual person like me and you hate trying to move each column individually and make them look about the same size. So you can do the same thing with rows by grabbing it and pulling it. Now you have divided each of your rows evenly across the entire spreadsheet. Now you may think, well, that's silly. Like, I knew that. But you would be shocked how many people I show spreadsheets, and when I show them what I call the magic square, they had no idea that you could divide all of them evenly like that. Same kind of thing at the top of a column or the end of a row. If I make a change, I can affect that entire column by selecting the top, or at the end of a row, I can make a change and affect everything in the row. So I could just adjust one single row or adjust one single column. And if I make a change, to a column, like bold, everything in that column is affected. So mainly I just wanted to kind of show you, just from a navigation perspective, what you can do with that magic square. Once it is selected, everything in the spreadsheet is affected. So other information is when you go through all of your tools, you'll see a lot of the same stuff here that we saw in Docs. Notice that I can open a new one. I can import. This becomes helpful if you have data from something else and you need to import it here. You may find as you start using PowerSchool that you have some data there that you want to import. When we're talking about the file extension that is used for spreadsheets, it can take that Excel file extension, which I believe is .xls, but then also it can take .csv, which is comma separated values. And a lot of your different programs will have opportunities to export student data in a .csv, a comma separated value. And so that is something that can be imported into this. One example is PowerSchool PD, which you guys signed up in. I exported all of your email addresses and then was able to import them into a spreadsheet. I could pull them into my email. And so you're gonna find that a lot of the software you use with kids, if you're using Star Reading, Star Math, some of these, iExcel, there may be reports that they provide for you, and it would be beneficial for you to download and upload them into Sheets, because then you can manipulate those. Make a copy still here. Download, notice that you have some options on downloading. You can put it in that XLSX, I guess is the newest Excel format. Open Document, which is actually a freeware or a shareware that's kind of Linux based, I believe. PDF, so you can download a spreadsheet into a PDF. A web page, and there's that CSV, that comma separated values, and then a tab separated values. So you can download information in any of those. The same version history that we saw in Google Docs is also here, and all of the other options that you're used to. In edit, we're going to see similar, delete, copy, paste, cut. All right, so this is a very important feature here under view. When I'm going to skip freeze for just a minute and look at grid lines, if I uncheck that, that doesn't look like a spreadsheet anymore. So under view, if you ever look at yours and it does not look like a spreadsheet, click on grid lines so you can see those grid lines. It does not necessarily mean those will print though. So you will have to have an additional setting for that. Also under view, you can say view protected ranges. So if you have anything that is protected in your sheet so that it can't be changed, you can do that. Formula bar, that is what I was talking about earlier, where you could type in directly your formula or your text. And so I usually leave that one on. Show formulas, you can leave that one on as well. Zoom, this allows you to zoom in if you've got a lot of data there, or zoom out. All right, I do see that we have some things in chat, so I'm just gonna briefly look and see if there was anything else. All right, I don't think there's anything I need to address in the chat. Anybody have any questions so far? Because I don't want to like fly through this too fast.
This is Vincent Cox. I have my mic unmuted. I'm not sure if it's working.
Yes, yes.
Okay, my question, it starts off by letting you know that I took the Chrome extension, what we're doing.
Yeah.
And they had a slide in there, maybe a PowerPoint slide, and it had a list of resources of all these different Chrome extensions. Later on, would you be willing to create an online forum where we could go through each one of those? Because it would really help me target whatever group of students I have in the fall. But I also want to say, this is great, but that's my question. If we brought to you different resources that we wanted to try, like Edpuzzle, that's the one that came to my mind that I remember, and I don't have my notes in front of me. But if we brought that to you, would you go through with a fine-tooth comb like you're doing now? And then the only other really question I have is separated comma values. Yeah. I needed an explanation of that. I got lost at that point.
Yeah. So let me start from the last question, which is comma separated values is really just a file format like a .csv. And what happens is I can, when I download this particular information, it will be considered a CSV file. And I'm gonna show it in my Finder. So it's a CSV file. When I open it, it's going to typically use either Numbers or Excel to open that file. So you can see in some of my other files here, this is a CSV. That's what I pulled from PowerSchool PD. It's just a particular file format that separates all the values with commas. But once I pull it into a spreadsheet program, it takes those comma separated values and dumps them into cells. So rather than it being a list of things separated by commas, they're now separated by cells, and it's much more readable. But a lot of times, just for compression's sake, I think comma separated values is how a computer reads data, and then you can put it into spreadsheets.
Got it.
The other question is, yeah, I would love to work with you or your school on creating some resources that would help you guys in the fall. So yeah, just email me whatever what you need help with, because what you're talking about when it comes to Edpuzzle, like that's a program that you can use with your students. And we're going to talk.
Can I interrupt you once?
Yeah.
It's considered a Chrome extension too, correct?
There may be an Edpuzzle extension.
So it'll populate across the top of your tab if you're going to use.
Yeah, there are tons of Chrome extensions that I have up here that are actually third-party programs. And so Edpuzzle has its own site that you can go to as well.
Your own colleagues put out a list in that Chrome extension professional development. So I just I want to give you that list. It was a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
I was going to go through all of them on my own. but it would be much better to go through with an expert like you.
Yes, yes. And if you want to use like that Book Me link that's on the slideshow, then we can probably pick a time and make that happen. All right, so we were in insert. And so you're going to use this a lot when you're doing spreadsheets. So very handy there. I can insert a row above. So if I'm working right here, I can insert a row above or a row below what I'm doing. I can also access that when I right click. So two different ways to insert a row or insert a column. So I go to insert, and here I can be more specific, above or below, or I can do column left or right. And so I can add a column into my spreadsheet. And that can be helpful when you've put some data in there and you want to add additional data. And I want to look down here. You're definitely going to be asked on the exam to insert a chart. Now, you're not going to want to use this particular spreadsheet and have a chart. You're going to want a spreadsheet that has data in it, and then you insert chart, and it automatically grabs your data and puts it into a chart for you. So we're going to look at that with a sample one in just a minute. You can insert images, and you can do it either in the cell or over the cell. So this is really helpful if you are making something that's like a table or an explanation and you have pictures that you want to include. Maybe it is materials. For example, I have a budget of things that I need to spend each year, and a lot of times I will use a spreadsheet, and I'll either take a screenshot or I'll grab an image of that particular thing, and I will put those in the cells so that not only do I have a description of this item I'm ordering, but there's a quick image or screenshot of it. You can put it in the cell. Drawing, you can make drawings just like we did yesterday. And you can add a form. Now, just to be honest, I think this is kind of backwards. I don't think I would want the spreadsheet first and then the form. We're going to talk about forms next. Typically, you're going to want to create the form, and when you start collecting responses, you can have it linked to a spreadsheet. I don't know why you would do it the other way, but you do have the option here. Next is insert function. And so this is where I say a spreadsheet is powerful. It will do math for you. Notice at the top, there are some functions in all caps. These are kind of the most commonly used ones. As a teacher, I use a spreadsheet a lot for averaging. Before we did a lot of computerized grade averaging, this is what I did. Especially if I had students doing a project, I had a rubric, something like that, I would use a spreadsheet to add it up, average it, that kind of thing. So I am not going to do justice to try to go through all of these different formulas and functions and tell you what they do. But on the slide, I believe we have a list of, let's see. Yeah, Google Sheets function list. And so I tend to look up whatever function I'm wanting to use because I don't have them all memorized. But these are going to be some you use a lot. Some obviously adding everything in the column together, average, taking the average. Count is going to give you like an actual count. So if I had 10 rows of data, the count would be 10 because that's how many I have there. And then the maximum and the minimum are also some that you would use to find out what's the maximum value in that column and what is the minimum value in that column. So many more that you can go through here. There is a place to insert a link, which is also handy. For example, I mentioned using this for a budget. A lot of times if I found something on Amazon, I will put the link also in my spreadsheet. This is a feature that I love. Now you notice that in Google Keep, I love the checkboxes. This is a cool feature. So I am going to actually make a list here. So I'm gonna say milk, bread, soda, cheese. Why am I always hungry? I don't know. All right, so I'm going to do insert checkbox. And so now I can literally check that box, which is super helpful. I can't tell you how many times I would use a spreadsheet for a list of students and wanted to check off who had paid for a field trip or something. These check boxes are amazing. Now, it would be really helpful if I didn't have to go insert checkbox every time. So I talked about the magic box or the magic square over here. When you have a cell selected, I also like to talk about this little magic handlebar. Again, that's not the official Google title for it. But when I said that you can grab what I call the handlebar over here and resize things, when you have a cell selected, you're going to notice a little bitty box, a magic handlebar. And once you hover over it, it is going to become a crosshair. And that lets you know that it is draggable. So I am going to grab, click, and drag, and it populates all of that column with checkboxes. So that is super helpful. Notice that it also grabbed the check mark. So if I did not want it to grab the check mark, then I would need to have an unchecked box when I made that click and drag. So I love the checkbox feature. I think it is way overdue. It is fairly new, and so I really, really like that. So that was under Insert, but notice I mentioned that you can also right-click and get a lot of these features. Checkbox is not one of them, so you will have to use Insert. Okay, another feature that I think is really cool is the Note feature. So let's say that you are using this for student information, student grades. Spreadsheets are great for tracking student behavior, student discipline. So let's say I've got this, and this is a list of discipline issues, or this is a communication log with parents. I can make a note. That note is tied to whatever cell that I have selected. So here I can say, Mom will pay next week. Now, I click off of it, the note goes away. But notice what's in the corner, a little bitty triangle indicating there is a note connected to that. That is amazing. I love that. So that is, I would select my cell, I would insert, and I would go down to note. You can also do it with a comment. Okay, so I'm going to say, need to call Mom. Okay, click off of it. It is yellow, little yellow triangle. And I hover over, I see that comment. The difference of the note and the comment is that a note is almost like it's just for my information. If I'm collaborating on the spreadsheet, then the comment allows someone to resolve it or to edit, delete, or link to that comment. So if someone is collaborating with me, they can even reply. So you can insert a comment or a note, and it can be tied to a cell. So all of that was in Insert. You can also insert a new sheet. So if I click Insert New Sheet, it appears down here at the bottom. So along the lines with vocabulary, and we've gone all the way through Insert, I do want to mention that this is your active worksheet. When you have more than one sheet, it's called a workbook. And so down here, I have sheet 1 and sheet 2. I don't like them just being called sheet 1 and sheet 2. So I can make changes to that. So right down here, I can use this plus sign, just like I inserted a new sheet up there under Insert. I can insert a new worksheet by clicking that plus sign. Now, down here, notice I have a 1 that indicates that I have one comment on this sheet. And notice when I hovered over that little 1, it actually showed me that comment. Didn't mention the note. So notice the difference in comments versus notes. Now, here is something that you need to know about having those multiple worksheets. Down here at the bottom, there is a little arrow, drop down, or I guess in this case, scoop up. I don't know what you call it. Anyway, you click there and it's going to give you options related to the active worksheet. I can delete that. So if I don't need it, I can get rid of it. I can duplicate it. The benefit to duplicate is it's going to grab all the data I currently have here and make another copy. I can copy to. So I can copy this to a new spreadsheet or existing spreadsheet. My feature that I use the most is rename. So I'm going to call this master, like the master sheet. So I can rename. Now this is another cool feature, change color. So I'm going to choose red. Now it's not going to turn that entire tab red, but it does give me a strip of color. I really like that. I used this when I worked for a school district, and I had different worksheets for every school that we served, and I would put like their school colors on that worksheet, which is another visual way for me to see those worksheets. I can protect the sheet. And so anytime you're dealing with protecting a range or a sheet, that means that I am going to lock information. And so it is saying, what do I want to lock? I want to lock this whole sheet except certain cells. And it's going to ask me what cells. Now, anytime you're working in spreadsheets and one of these little sidebars open, and this is going to happen once we start dealing with functions and pivot tables and things like that. It is going to ask you to name the range or what area. So in this case, I can protect the whole sheet, which means nobody can go in here and click anything and change it unless I want them to. Or I can protect this sheet and I can say except certain cells. Now, here are the cells that I want it to address. So hold on. There we go. So what I did is I clicked here and then I clicked in my spreadsheet. What are the cells that I want people to have permission to change? And all I did was select all these cells. If I wanted to, I could have typed B1 colon B7. But I just think it's easier to go over here and grab them within the sheet. So when it's talking about cells, it is referring to kind of like when you're teaching math, you have the X and the Y axis. You're going to have B, which is the column, and 1, which is the row. So that's the first cell that I'm allowing people to make changes to, all the way down to here. And then I would say, okay. And I could even be very specific and set permissions and give people custom permissions. So I can add people, add email addresses. So I can be very specific as to who gets to do that. So notice I've got this protected area here. And when I want to change that, I can just get rid of it and remove that protection. Okay, so how did I do that? Well, in this case, I did that from down there with my sheets. And it allowed me to protect sheet. There are other places that I can do that, but I can do it here as well. I can hide this sheet so that other people do not see it. And notice that I got this little note. Use the view menu to unhide sheets. All editors can view and unhide sheets. So let's say I have a master copy with information in it, and I want to share this. Then I can make people viewers and they can't see that master sheet. And so I would go here to view. It says there's one hidden sheet. And then when I click on that, it comes back. Top secret stuff. All right, view comments and move to the right, and move to the right would mean it just shifts over. I can also click and drag, just like you can with tabs in Chrome. I can move them that way as well. All right, I know I went through that really, really fast. Hopefully you are going to check out that slideshow that I showed you too, and it will explain some of this stuff much better. But like I said, I do like the ability to rename this. And to give it a color. It's just another visual way for you to look at the different active sheets. Now, we'll tell you this, when you're ready to download or email or print, you will need to tell it if you want just the active sheet or the entire workbook. So this is what it's talking about when it's talking about the active worksheet versus the workbook itself. All right, so we've covered everything with insert. So let's look at format. There are lots of ways you can format a spreadsheet. What is significant when it comes to formatting? And I'm going to just put some numbers here. When you are making your formatting decisions, you have a couple of places that you can address this. When it comes to a spreadsheet, a lot of times you're dealing with numbers, you're dealing with decimal points, you're dealing with money. So rather than putting the $ each time, I can actually choose an entire column, go to format, and choose what kind of number do I want to see there. Am I wanting to see a %? There's a %. Well, I don't like the way that looks. So I'm going to go back here to my %. And notice it shows me it's going to put 2 decimal points in behind that. I can do scientific, I can do accounting or currency. Notice accounting looks different than currency. Currency is what we are using most. I didn't have the whole column selected, so let me change that. Now we've got it into dollar amounts. Now, let me go back to the %. Okay, so we're like, that does not look like it was 34. Why does it say 3,400? Another neat little feature, I mentioned that you can format the number here, but you also have these nifty tools. You can click that $, it will automatically change all that you have selected into dollars, percents. Here is a very handy one, decrease the decimal places. Okay, so I can go in and I can decrease my decimals right here or increase my decimals. And then here are all of those number formats as well. So I think that that is super handy to be able to quickly adjust your values. And that was under format number. All of this looks familiar, bold, italic, font size. One thing that's going to be handy to you as you add a lot of information is going to be alignment. So I'm going to just click that magic square and we look at format and I choose align. Notice that I have left, center, or right, top, middle, bottom. Okay, so if I am doing something with numbers, I want everything to be the left or the right or the center, I can choose that. So notice automatically it's to the left, but I can adjust those numbers, which are typically on the right, so that everything is to the left. I can center, and as I get, because notice these are at the bottom of the cell, and I can go in here and I can align them to the middle. So depending on how you want things lined up, you may prefer that everything is centered, centered left and right, center top to bottom within those cells. And that's under format, align. So I'm going to skip over merge cells real quick and talk about text wrapping. Now this is something, and maybe you guys that are Sheets users can give me a tip on this. In my experience, I can select this entire sheet and I can say format, text wrapping, and change it to wrap, and it looks great. But then when I come back to it and add more data, it seems to ignore that text wrapping format. And what I mean by text wrapping, overflow versus wrap, if you've ever looked at a Google spreadsheet and you feel like you have to widen the column so you can read everything that that person wrote in that cell, well, we are going to say text wrap, and that is going to wrap all the text and make it fit into the cell. So I find that to be most helpful, especially if I have information from a survey where I've asked people to make comments. I definitely go in and I choose wrap, and that wraps everything and fits it into the cell. It may make the cell much bigger, but I think that's super helpful. If you don't want it to do that, if you want to maintain the integrity of the size and the width of your cells, leave it at overflow. And that means you'll click on that cell and you'll have to do that or make it bigger to read the entire thing. The other thing, text rotation. I'll be honest, I've never used this. It's not on level 1. And so if you have used this, you might give us a tip on why you would need it, but I'm just going to skip right on over it. All right, there are some conditional formatting. This is not something that I think you're going to see on the test, but I'm just going to show you that you can do some conditional formatting, meaning that you can do a color scale. Now, this is super helpful if you want to create a spreadsheet that addresses student grades. And you want to set something and say, this is going to, I'm going to say that this is going to apply to this range of cells, because you have to have some number values for this to actually make sense. Let's see, is it going to grab it all? It is not. There we go. All right, okay. So once I clicked on that, it took me to my data range. So format cells if, and so I'm going to make a decision. And this is where it can get a little intimidating. If the text, let's say, I don't have anything that's empty, starts with, let's say, if it starts with 3. And I'm going to change it to this pink color. And done. Now, did it? It did not do that. This is why I said it gets intimidating. Maybe because these numbers are currency. So hold on. Told you, you would just have to be patient with me. There we go. Because it started with a $sign, it did not work. But on conditional formatting, you could say if it starts with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. That means every value, all the student grades that start with anything below a 60 would be red. That would be helpful because now you have a visual showing you all of the failing grades of your students. You could also do the rule about if a cell is empty. So let's say that you have a series of grades or you have students working on a project together and you have empty sections. Well, it's easy to see here, but if you have, 100 students, then this would mark all of the cells that are empty with a color. So that's what conditional formatting does. And that's down here. And I can hit clear formatting by grabbing everything and clear all of the formatting. Notice what it cleared. It cleared the alignment, it cleared the bold, it cleared any kind of formatting that I've done. Now, I use the data feature a lot, and it's mainly for the sorting. Okay, so I love the fact that I can sort things. Now, if I choose sort the sheet, like I just did, it kind of throws everything out of whack. So I'm going to hit the undo button. What I like to do a lot of times is grab a specific column, the column that I want to sort. I can right click and I can choose to sort the sheet alphabetically. Okay, so I love that feature. I use it all of the time to sort my names and everything alphabetically. So definitely use that. Notice it sorts the sheet. It doesn't it doesn't go and separate anything, so it keeps it there together. Let's see. I'm just making sure that I have addressed all the questions. All right, so that is the sorting, and notice it's a sort sheet by column A. That was the choice that I was given there. So it would have done the same thing, but here it ignored the blank spaces. I'm gonna skip through filter slicer. This is not something that I think you're going to need. And we're going to skip this section because this is pretty complicated. And we're gonna go down to some of these. So I'm gonna take a minute and actually gonna grab this information. Now, this, and I gave you a similar table to this on our task sheet, but I wanted to show you one of the options there under data that I use a lot. So let's say that you have a report that has student names, first and last name together, like this one. And I want to alphabetize it like it is in the grade book. Well, that's by last name. So what you can use is you select this column, go to format, go to data, and then choose split text to columns. Now, here is the biggest thing that I would say is that you need to have a blank column for it to divide it into. So I'm going to insert a column to the left and then start that process again. So back here to data, split text to columns. It says, what is the separator? So you remember we talked about a CSV file as a comma separated value. So this is asking, what is separating those items that you want to split into two columns? Well, you can let it detect automatically, which if I do, it will pick it up just fine. But notice I can choose comma. So you may get a report where it says Anderson, comma, Brady, and it's all in one cell. Or in this case, I have Brady space Anderson. So my separator is a space. But if I choose to detect automatically, it will detect it. And then look at the magic. Boom. I have had so many people that have seen that and gone, like that could have saved me a ton of time. So here's the reason why. Why do I want to separate those values? Because now I can sort the sheet A to Z by the last name. Now, look what happened. I didn't want that to happen. So let me show you how to fix that. So we were just looking at data. Now, Google never asked me my opinion, but I kind of wish that this particular feature was under data, but it is not. It is under view. So the way I always think about it is when I'm viewing my spreadsheet, I want the top row to stay frozen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look over here into view, and this is probably one of my other favorite features, and that is the freeze feature. Now the freeze feature gives you some options. And the first option is that you can freeze one row. Now notice when I choose that, it puts a solid line underneath it. And as I scroll, it stays frozen. It locks that top row. Okay, let's say that I also am going to be putting a lot of data out here. And I want to be able to see the student names the entire time. I can also go to View, Freeze, and I can choose my columns. In this case, their name is first, last in 2 columns. So I'm going to choose 2 columns. I could choose 3 or 4 columns. Let's say that when I did split to text columns, I had a girl named Anne Marie Caldwell. So I would want to make sure I had 2 columns out beside that. So anyone with those double names could also be spread across those columns. And I can say up to the current column or 2 columns. In this case, 2 columns. Now, that data goes that way and that way. I love that feature. Pretty awesome. All right, so we were in data, and I told you, in my opinion, I wish freeze was here because it would make more sense for it to be here, but it's over there under view. So what we were looking at was this, looking at sorting the sheet. So if I do this now, this is frozen. So that doesn't get sorted with everything else. So that is a very helpful feature. All right, so we've gone over sorting. I told you I'm gonna skip this section because this is a little more complicated. Split text to columns, remove duplicates. I have not used this much, but essentially you can go in and pull out duplicates. That wouldn't work if we have several kids with the last name Jones. So now we're into tools. I can create a form, but it's not going to necessarily create it based on what I have here. So like I said, I don't do the create a form. I kind of do the form first and then the spreadsheet. I have not used these features because, and you will not need those in level 1. Spell check, you can do all of these things. There's that protect sheet option again. When you do have a form attached, this allows you to edit the form, go to the live form, all of that. And so I use this a lot because sometimes I'm looking at the spreadsheet and I want to go back to the form and see the questions or see a chart of the responses. So that's very helpful. And then you have a slew of add-ons that make your life super easy. Lots of these I've used, and somebody mentioned Doc to Form being an add-on that they love. There are a lot of these that are super helpful. Joy mentioned inventory. I know a lot of librarians that use a lab scheduler add-on that is helpful. There are some rubric tools here that are really nice. And some of the add-ons have kind of gone by the wayside because of Google Classroom and the fact that it has this awesome grading shell and everything now. So a lot of the things on my list, even like Doctopus, which is a more grade specific one, isn't used as much. All right, I mentioned I was going to come back to the data section, and I will. I want to look under format. We didn't talk about merge cells, okay, but we could, let me insert one above. Let me give this a title, and I'm just going to say student snack cost assessment. I should have capitalized all that. All right, so we talked about, text wrapping and text alignment. And so if I had chosen this one and on my text wrapping had chosen wrap, notice what it looks like. So here is what it looks like for text wrap versus that overflow. But let's say I wanted this header to go across all of these cells. That's where I'm going to use merge cells. So I'm going to grab all of these cells so that I'm telling it where I want this to be merged. I'm going to merge all these cells together. And then I'm going to go up to Format and choose Merge Cells. I'm sorry. Let's see. It may be because I have the column frozen, but let me try this again. Yep, it's because I have the columns frozen. So let me unfreeze the columns. There we go. So now let's try it again. All right, so Format, Merge Cells, Merge All. Now I have that merged. The problem is I really wanted it to be horizontal. So let's try this. Let's see. Let's try this again and go to Format, Merge Cells, Merge Horizontally. Nope, I didn't do it either. What I'm going to do is center it, and now it looks like what I want it to look like. There we go. And so I've got my header across the top. Now I can go back and I can freeze those columns. Nope, I can't. That's what I was going to check on. So anyway, once I merge something across the top, it is not going to let me have those frozen columns, although the top is still frozen. So note to self. All right. Looking back at my, hold on just a second. Looking back at this, we've looked at sorting, organizing our data. I want us to look at inserting a chart and a pivot table. With a sheet, you can share it just like you share anything else with the share button up there, and allow people to collaborate with you as well. And I am going to do, let's see, insert. No, we're going to do a, yeah, I'm going to do insert a chart. So you will definitely have to insert a chart in the level 1 test. So once you have data, you're going to click insert. Yeah, well, you know, you have to actually select the data. So let's try again. I am going to grab all of my data and I'm going to insert chart. Now, I have this chart that has everything, and it looks kind of weird because it's got all these names. Anytime you have something that's not a number value, you're going to have a kind of a wonky looking chart. Wonky is not the official name for it. You do have choices of the kind of chart. So based on your data, you might choose a different chart. This one looks better. You can do a pie chart. That's got to be numeric. So let's go with the column chart again. And then you can choose what you want to be on the x-axis and the y-axis. So based on these decisions, it will change the look of your chart. Notice it's got my data range here. If I added more information, I could click and choose my data range. I can choose to aggregate that data, and notice it gives me all kinds of options there on how I could aggregate that data. And then it lets me use row 1 as headers, and I'm going to say that, or use column C as labels or not. So you can insert a chart once you have data, and you can move that chart around and put it wherever you want to put it within your spreadsheet. And you can also make it smaller and make it fit into where you want. Another thing that you can do is right-click that data and make changes to it here as well. Or you can go to the Insert Chart feature. All right, I can feel like everybody's sort of slowing down. I do want to show us a pivot table, but I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to go to the Google Sheets task and try out this feature. of creating a chart. So I'm going to step away, and I've got to get my power cord because I'm running out of power. And we're going to take about 15 minutes. There is a little 10-question quiz and then a task with a sample Google Sheet.
Hey, Brandy, the Google Sheet's asking us for access.
Oh, of course it is. Hold on just one second.
Or at least it's asking me. I can't speak for everybody.
I thought that I had it set for force a copy because when I click on it, that happens.
Speak for the masses.
Okay, so that is accurate to everybody. All right, well then let me work on that link really quickly because when I clicked on it, it took me to the right place. Let's see if I can copy that link and fix it for you. All right, so give it a refresh and somebody tell me if that worked or if we're still in the same boat. And that's on 34, slide 34. Anybody else?
Can you please reshare the link?
To the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Hold on.
Hey, mine still shows that it's access is denied even after I I can't think of the word right now, refresh my screen. It still says you need access.
Interesting. All right, well, we'll just go old school and hold on. I'm going to share it straight from the page instead of using the force a copy link. I think that's it. That's exactly what it is. I bet that fixed it. All right.
I know it does that in Screencastify as well, where if you don't like go in there and set a specific like the permissions, it'll just automatically default to certain ones. So that might have been what it was doing for yours.
So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. When you open this link, you should be good now to refresh. When you open this link, please make a copy. Do not start typing directly on there. Not really sure why the force copy link is, and it may be because it just seems to be defaulting to restricted and not anyone with the link when I do link sharing. So somebody let me know that we're good.
We're good.
Yay. All right, I'm gonna go and get my power cord before we just lose the power.
Brandy, did you share it to our email or did you share it through the presentation?
It's in the presentation.
Okay, because mine's not coming up again.
So you're saying
And I refreshed.
when you click on Google Sheet, you don't get the Google Sheet itself? I'll put it in the chat box too.
I'll try again.
All right, I put the link to the Google spreadsheet in the chat box too. All right, another practice sheet. I will get that one going too. I know what it is. I have an extension that I love that is called Sir Links-a-Lot. And I think Sir Links-a-Lot is not working correctly now, because normally if I go here, it lets me choose a forced copy. But I think because of this new feature, the link is automatically restricted. It is affecting all of those links that are being created. So I'm going to fix that one, I hope. Look, I'm telling you, by the time we're done with this week, I'm going to feel like a pro, and y'all are going to be like, this lady is crazy. All right. Because I was like, I tested all my links, but I used them through that Sir Links a lot. So, all right. So hopefully we're in business. I'm at like 10% right now, so definitely going to have to go and take care of that. So
Gianna.
Gianna.
So we have a couple more minutes as people are finishing this up. I'm going to go back a slide. And just mention to you that in the interest of time, and because I would fumble through it, I'm going to say we're going to flip the classroom a little bit, and I've added a video on how to do a pivot table. You will definitely see a question, one question at least, probably not more than one, on pivot tables. And rather than me fumble through it, this video does a much better job explaining it, which is actually how I practiced it. So I have a link to a video here on pivot tables. And then these links that are here about filtering and pivot tables are straight from like Google support. And they do a great job of explaining those. So definitely look at those when it comes to pivot tables. And it's something you just have to kind of practice, which is why I added a link to another practice sheet for you to just practice and remember to make copies, because the forced copy link that I had didn't work. I may have to go back to the old way of just manipulating the URL myself and changing the end of it to copy. I had that extension that did it for me, and not successfully, evidently. But I think it has more to do with the sharing setup in Google, because it looks like now with that new sharing window that's opening up, it defaults to restricted, and it is not as obvious to me on anyone with the link being an option. So that's on me. I am going to click to this how-tos for Google Sheets. This is a great tips and tricks website on some of the features that we looked at, particularly hiding rows and columns, hyperlinking, adding charts, freezing cells. So it's got some how-to information there. And then this Google Sheets function list is from the Google support site. And notice it lists the name of it as well as a description of what it does. Now this is a long list. So if you know for a fact that you want to look up a particular function, like there is one, starts with CON, and I'm looking at it based on the name. Let's see. So this is going to tell me it's a text one, got a name there, and I'm going to call this, let's just look at average. There we go. And so this says all of the ones that are average and a description of what it does. So it is very useful when you're looking for a particular formula, or you're trying to figure out if that formula is the one that you need to use for the data that you have. And then here's another video talking specifically about Google Sheets. So hopefully you got the task finished. If you didn't, then you can work on that when we're done. But I do want us to be sure to have time to talk about Google Forms. So let's see, a question in the chat says, is the data supposed to be replaced with the chart? Typically the chart is going to pop up on top of your sheets, and you can manipulate it and drag it down to where you want it to be. But the data in your sheet shouldn't go away. I think that might be the question. All right, looking at Google Forms has come a long way from when it started. Initially, it was basically for surveys. Then people in the education community said, hey, we want this for more than surveys. We want to make it a quiz. And they had a lot of creative ways to do that. And then Google made it much easier over the last 5 years, I would say, so that there are features in it that are really teacher friendly. But we need to look at it from a survey perspective and from a quiz perspective on Google Forms. So either put in the chat or show a raise of hand if you are a frequent Google Forms user, either for surveys or quizzes. Me. I use it a ton. I'm actually working on one for my husband. He's a coach and a teacher, but he's a middle school football coach. And their school, I guess like every school in the state, have to have every kid fill out, every parent, I'm sorry, fill out a COVID-19 health screening form, just sort of acknowledging several things. It's literally just a checklist. There's not even a signature on the bottom of it, but it's from the State High School Athletic Association. So this afternoon, I'm actually going to work on taking that form, putting it into a Google form so that the parents can pull it up on their phone, fill it out, and they'll have a spreadsheet of every kid who has their form on file for them. Because otherwise they were just going to have to hand out pieces of paper for parents to fill out as they drop kids off. And I'm like, we should digitize as much as possible. So Google Forms, I think, is definitely becoming one of the most useful tools for teachers. And so we are going to look at creating, editing a Google form. So let me go into Forms, and I go ahead and close out some of the stuff I've got. Oh, I just closed out my closed out what I was working on. So let's try that again.
Randy, just a quick question.
Yes.
while you're clicking.
Yes.
On the beginning this Google Forms, would this be the time to think about comma separated values and then switching them into the cells of the sheets? Is that something you do at the beginning of your creating the Google form?
Well, with your Google form, the output of the form can be putting the responses into a spreadsheet, but it's going to put it into a spreadsheet and put it into the cells.
Okay.
So
all right.
you would do after the fact is once you have that data, you can download it into a different format if you wanted to, like a CSV format. But you really won't need anything having to do with that format when it comes to your forms.
So when we see that question, you're downloading something and they say, it could be PDF, it could be yada, yada, yada. And I've seen comma separated values and never known what it was. It will automatically do that with any document that you're trying to download, or is that something that the architect has to set up when they're making the document? Because it asks that all the time. However I'm downloading stuff, what kind of file do I want it to be?
It's gonna, yeah, and it depends on the platform or the program that you're using. It's gonna give you the decision making to what format you want the end result. So
Okay.
if you are wanting a PDF that nobody can change or do anything to, then you would download it that way. If you wanted in a CSV or an XLS or whatever, I mean, that's up to you. Depends on what you're wanting to do with the end result.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's look at creating a form. We can do forms.new. That's going to take me straight to an untitled form, a blank form. I can go here to new, and I talked about this yesterday. When you go this route, you have the option to go from a template. Now, this is very helpful in the education world. If you go into Google Drive and you say new and you go and find Google Forms, there's this little arrow here that gives you blank form or from a template. So when I chose from a template, it takes me to the Google Forms homepage. Now, in a school domain, you are probably going to see two tabs or menu options up here. The name of your district gallery, which may have nothing in it, or it may have something you've never seen before in it. And then you'll have your own personal gallery or the template gallery from Google. So just know if you go and it doesn't look like this, it may be because your district has a district gallery where they could push out templates to you potentially. And then you'll have the Google template gallery. So here's why this is significant. Why reinvent the wheel? If you know already you're going to have a survey similar to one of these, then you can use it. So for example, this find a time, when I choose that, it's going to automatically put it in my Google Drive, and I can go in and edit and manipulate that. So that is a great example of like, we're looking for a time for a meeting. I'm going to send this out to everybody and they'll choose what time is most convenient. There's an RSVP, a party invitation. I mean, if you can imagine how you can use these, then you just download that template and then you can go in and make changes. They have some other ones, job application, work request, and then they have some specific ones for education. Now, I'm in my personal Gmail, so yours may look a little different because you're in an education domain. Then you may see the different templates. But I love this one. Look, exit ticket. If you already have an exit ticket made and you can adapt this, a worksheet, an evaluation for your course. So let's just say, for example, exit ticket. If I wanted to use this template, I simply click on the template. It automatically has now put this into my Google Drive, and I can go in and click and adjust these questions however I want. So just know you can go from a template, and notice here I am in Drive, exit ticket. That is the template that I just opened. Or I can do forms.new, and it opens up a blank form. So the first thing I want to tell you is you need to go up to the top and name the form that you're going to be creating. If I name it here, it will not automatically change here. And that is significant because once you're ready to do something with the answers to this form, you don't want a bunch of spreadsheets and things called untitled form in your Drive. So go ahead here and add this as, give it a name. So test bootcamp, so we're going to call it. Notice when I did that and clicked here, it automatically changed the title, but it won't do it in reverse. So I can't give the name here and then up in the corner, expect it to change. It doesn't. So go there to change the name. And so once I've got my name here, I have an option for a description. You can put some instructions here if you want to, but when you publish your form, you will not see the words form descriptions. You don't actually have to put anything here. So when you're ready to add some questions, and let's imagine that we are now creating a survey. I'm going to call this survey. Notice by changing it here, it did not change it here. So I'm going to change it here. This is survey. And I'm ready to make my first survey question. I click on where it says Untitled Question. And I'm going to give this first question is going to be first name. Now, notice that Google is intuitive and it changes the type of question to a short answer question. If I wanted to, I can choose any of these kinds of questions, but obviously Google said, hey, first name is going to be a short answer question. Okay, now down here at the bottom of every question, you have the option to duplicate the question, which is really handy if you're going to have the next question be last name. I can delete it and I can choose whether it is required or not required. Some other options within the question on the three-dot menu is to show a description or response validation, and we'll talk about that one a little bit later. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this question because my next question naturally is going to be last name. Okay, so I already have first name and last name. Both questions are set as required. Now, when I'm ready to create another question, I don't want to duplicate these. I have a floating toolbar that is going to be down here. And trying to move around my Zoom stuff so that it's out of my way. So if I use this plus, it is going to automatically create a new question. And I'm going to say, what is your favorite color? And now I can add my options. So blue, yellow, red, and then I can also do none of the above. Now, when I'm adding questions, I can click or I can hit return or enter, and it automatically goes to the next line as I'm creating that. So a couple of things I want to mention in the question feature. I can use these little 6 dots that show up and manipulate where my answer choices are. So if I want to switch the order of my answer choices, I can do that with those 6 dots. And I see that somebody asked a question in the chat and Julie just answered it right away. Why would you put first name, last name? So I always recommend that you do a question for each because I want to be able to sort the resulting spreadsheet by last name. I could say just name and they could put first and last together. And then I could use that split text to columns feature in my spreadsheet and then sort, but this is just a time saver. So I'll do last name, first name as separate questions. So anyway, I was mentioning that you can change these order of your results, of your question choices, your answer choices, I apologize. Another thing that you can do within the question, notice these 6 dots at the top. You can drag questions up or down in the order of your survey. So anytime you see those 6 dots, it allows you to manipulate where those questions are. So I have last name, first name, and I have a survey question. Now notice when I'm in the question, I do have the option to add other. And so we'll have other, and sometimes it will give you a place to type for other. And then you also have the option to delete an answer choice you don't want. But notice when I hover over answer choices, this little icon for adding an image, and that's pretty universal in Google. I love the fact that you can add images to answer choices. This is great for your younger kids. So if we're doing a test on vocabulary or on letters, you can actually put pictures associated. I've seen some schools that use Google Forms for voting, and they actually put pictures of the homecoming queen candidates or the vice president candidates, actually put the kids' pictures, which is kind of cool. So you have those options. And within the question type, you have all of these types. So short answer, and it's just going to be a few words. Paragraph, if you want to give them an option for longer. Multiple choice is pretty obvious. There's also checkboxes. So if you have a question where you want them to check all that apply, that's a good one. Drop down. Somebody asked me, what's the difference in drop down and multiple choice? I would say if you're going to go beyond like 5 or 6 choices, do a drop down. It's going to make your form look cleaner because with multiple choice, you don't want them to have to scan all the way down the page. With drop down, it's a little simpler to see. There are these other options. File upload, I love that one because you could create essentially a form for any assignment you want and choose file upload. And it forces everything into a spreadsheet for you. So you could have your students submitting to an essay contest. You could have your students submitting artwork, and they can take a picture of their artwork and upload it into here. So file upload is huge. Linear scale, multiple choice grid, and checkbox grid. I'm going to be completely transparent with you. I've only used a couple of these, and you have to be very specific in what kind of answers you want. Linear scale is pretty obvious. On a scale of 1 to 5, which of these do you prefer? Multiple choice grid and checkbox grid are a little more complicated, so I would just say that you might want to look at Google support on each of those choices and see an example of them. You can also do a date question, a time question, you know, what date is convenient for you, and it puts the answer like has a calendar little attachment there. Other things about these this floating toolbar, I've already talked about adding a question. Import questions. This is a huge feature for teachers. So if I choose import questions, it is going to look at all of my previously created forms. And it is going to ask me, do I want to import those questions into this form? Okay, so I am going to grab this particular form and select it. Here are the kinds of questions that I've asked before. So I can check this question and check this question and import. And boom, it drops those questions into my form. So no longer do you have to make a copy of a whole form and then pull and delete questions. This import questions feature is invaluable. So if you're looking at this going, well, that, you know, some of these things don't apply, it is much easier to import a question you've already used and then adapt some of your answer choices. So I really love that import questions. It only works if you already have some forms that you've created in the past. So this would be super helpful if you are taking, say, a quiz that you made for your standard students, and you're going to recreate an adapted quiz for your special ed students. You could import questions, you could change the choices, you could take away some choices. So I think that's super helpful. You can add a title. So I can add a title anywhere within my quiz. So if I were to label a part of a quiz or a survey as like the parent interest portion, then I could do that. And it's just going to make it look a little more organized. And I know right now we're getting close to 11. This is one of those days. I think we're going to go to 11:15-ish. So if you cannot stay, I am recording, so it'll be on the YouTube playlist, but I would love for you to stay. That way we can kind of wrap this up. I spent too much time on Google Sheets. Sorry about that. So that is that part, the title and description. You can add an image. The benefit to adding an image within the quiz is that everything below that image can be questions that relate to that image. So I could add a map, I could add a dissection diagram, you know, whatever I want, and that's going to be in this survey. I can also insert a video. So this is super helpful. If you want to put a video your students are going to watch, and then they are going to answer some questions related to the video. And then the last thing is adding a section. This is a little different than adding a title and description. If I choose to add a section, notice how it is separated from the rest of the survey. Section 1 of 2, section 2 of 2. It's going to ask you to give it a title. A lot of times I'll just name it the same thing, and then maybe give it an A or a B or something like that. Now, here's the reason why you might section off a survey. You may want to ask people, I'm going to pull an example really quickly. You may want to ask people a question, and you want to direct them to an answer, to a section of this survey based on their answers. So I may have actually deleted the one that I'm looking at. I made a survey for my daughter's dance studio. So yes, so I did delete the original survey because the studio owner wanted everybody to give feedback. But initially when I created this survey, will your child join us when we resume dance classes? I had it set so that if they answered yes, it would continue through the survey. If they answered no, then it gave them some choices as to would they rejoin us for the recital. And so it kind of takes you in different directions. And so the way that you do that, so for example here, what is your favorite color? down here in the 3 dots, notice I have go to section based on answer. So if you chose yellow, red, or blue, you're going to continue to the next section. If you said none of the above, I am going to send you to section 2. The reason why I put the A there is so that I could remember what section 2 was. And so I'm going to send you to that section based on your answer. And my questions there might be, what is your favorite color? And they write it in since they didn't have that option. So that is a way to section off a survey. Now, one of the things that I teach when you're doing quizzes is a lot of times I teach sectioning off the quiz. And there's a reason why I would have you section off the quiz when it comes to shuffling your questions. So we'll look at that in just a second. But that is one thing that you have an option to do if you use that section feature. Any questions on that? And we're looking at this just from a survey perspective right now. So some other features that you have at the top of forms, if you have add-ons, and there are a lot of add-on options, they're going to show up here. And these add-ons, you would add, I think you could find those, yeah. When you go to the 3 dots menu, it lets you shop for add-ons here. But the other thing up here is customizing your theme. So right now it's going to be the basic purple because that's the form's color of the icon. But you have a lot of options now. You can change it to whatever color you like best. You can change the background color, but it's going to leave that white readable space. You can change your font style to something a little bit fancier. And then you can also choose a header, and they have a lot of headers that are automatically in here from Google, or you can import your own. And so I imported just the Technology in Motion logo or the JSU logos into mine, and you can import an image. And notice it adjusts the theme color based on the image that you chose. So it kind of keeps it all coordinated. And that's right there, the paint palette. I love the preview option. If I click on that eyeball, this shows me what it looks like if you're a student. Now, notice that it's got these questions set up, and I could go through and I could practice answering these questions as well. And so I'm just going to close out of that. That's the preview. And now I have the settings portion, and this is when you're getting ready to decide what your settings are for this particular survey. So in general, do I want it to collect email addresses? Do I want to limit it to 1 response? They can only do that if it is requiring them to sign in. Now, a lot of surveys, I want it to be public. I want to be able to send it out to parents, and they don't have a Google sign-in. So you can't necessarily limit it to 1 response unless you're requiring them to sign in. You can bluff and you can tell them that you can only respond once, but if they want to and you're not requiring them to sign in with a Google address, it can't block them from doing it more than 1 time. Do you want to give them the option to edit after they submit or see a summary of responses? This is helpful with a survey sometimes. After people take the survey, you want them to see how other people have responded. Next under presentation, these are super important, especially when we get into talking about a quiz. Do you want to see a progress bar at the bottom? You know, you have finished 3 of 5 questions. Do you want to shuffle the question order? This gets to be very significant when you're doing a quiz. And you don't want people to cheat. So shuffle question order is a good one. And this is another one, show link to submit another response. If you only want them taking the survey once, then uncheck this box, because sometimes people will just take it over and over again because that link is at the end. And you can also put your own special confirmation message, like thank you Thanks for taking our survey. You could direct them to your school's website. You can do whatever right there. And then you have quizzes. Make this a quiz. Now, I am not going to do it on the one I've already been working on. Actually going to start a brand new form and start out by making it a quiz. So settings, all the way over to quizzes, and make this a quiz. Once you check that, once you click that, make this a quiz, it converts the form from being a survey to being a self-graded quiz. So I have to go into settings and tell it, make this a quiz. The other option is if you are in that templates page, if you choose assessment, I think it's already set up in the settings. So now I'm going to be looking at these quiz options. The first option is, do I want to release the grade? Do I want to release the grade immediately? So once a student takes this test, if it's all multiple choice, and I'm going to set up an answer key for it, then sure, release the grade immediately, because then when they hit submit, they can see that they got 85%. If you have some discussion questions that you want to read and assess points on, then say later after manual review, and it will collect their emails, because once you're done reviewing it, then it will send their grade. So you have those choices. You also have these choices. Do I want them to see what they missed, the correct answers, and the point values? Many teachers will leave point values because they may have different point values per question. Some teachers do not want students to see missed questions or correct answers. It just depends on what kind of test you're setting up. If it's a benchmark test, you may want them to see what they've missed. Also, you're going to need to look at presentation, and this is where I'm going to say shuffle question order. I do not want to link to another response. Okay, when I mentioned earlier that I teach people to section off their test, here is why. I recommend that you set up the very top first section as your demographics. So I recommend to people that you ask name, you can separate first or last, or put both together. Period, if you're talking about secondary, teacher's name, whatever information you want to collect from them, it's usually only 2 or 3 questions. Then the second section is where you ask your questions. The reason for that is that Google will shuffle questions only within sections. So most kids don't care if the first part of their quiz shuffles up last name, first name, and period. They're not going to realize that it's shuffling questions. What you don't want is first name to be question number 20. And if you say shuffle question order, it's going to shuffle everything from the name to the date to everything. So I recommend that you section and make a demographic section. That is just from the Bible of Brandy. That is not official Google. So if you're doing shuffle question order, definitely do that. Somebody asked in the chat, how do people put a picture here? I am not 100% sure. The only thing I can imagine is that they might put like a picture URL there. There is a way to do that, but I've never tried it. So that's a good question. I'll see if any of my colleagues know the answer to that one. When I go over here to general, I can choose any of these and then hit save. I have to hit save. Here's what changes. Notice now that it's a quiz, I have something that says total points. When I click on the question, now I have answer key. So my question is going to be, what is today's weather? Sunny, cloudy. Now I click answer key. Today's weather is sunny. Ooh, my internet connection is unstable. I hope you guys aren't losing me. I bet that means my children are done with their chores and they're watching videos. So I'm going to choose sunny, and I have to assign it points. So I'm going to give this 3 points. I can do answer feedback, but I'm not going to go over answer feedback, but you have options for feedback. And one really cool thing there is you can add links or YouTube videos. So I have a colleague that does a lot on this. This is like tier 2 instruction within your quiz. But it's a cool feature. And when I'm done with point value and the correct answer, I'm going to click done. I know this question is ready to go because it has a green check mark, letting me know that it has an answer and it has a point value. So I would continue making my multiple choice questions or whatever type question I want and giving it answer choices. And notice my total points add up at the top so I can know how many points my quiz is worth. So when I'm ready to see my students' grades, I'm going to go over here, responses. Once I start getting people turning in their Google form, I will automatically start seeing some data here in the form of charts and graphs. But what I like when it comes to quizzes is I want to see a spreadsheet with all their data. So I am going to have to tell it to link this to a spreadsheet. So I'm going to click Create Spreadsheet. And if I forgot the step of naming it up in the top corner, this will say Untitled Form. So please trust me when I say always change the name in the corner first. So I'm going to say create a new spreadsheet, and I'm going to click Create. It will automatically create and open for me the spreadsheet, and this is where all of the data will be dumped. It will timestamp when your students finish their quiz. If you've told it to auto score it, it will automatically dump their score, and it will put all of their answers here. If you've asked first name, last name, you'll have 2 columns, and you can sort by last name very easily. If you've asked class period, you can sort by class period. So all of those are really helpful things to think about when you're creating your tests. How do you want to view their answers? Remember some of the things we talked about when it came to conditional formatting? And I said if a value is empty or starts with a certain number, so I could actually address misconceptions. I could look at who had answered a question wrong, and it would turn it red based on the formatting. So if you understand some basics of spreadsheets, it's going to make the data that you get from a quiz or a survey that much better. And I'm going to look here at this one that was a survey. I'm going to tell it to create the spreadsheet and just let you look at how this has got the last name, first name, and the questions, no score, because this one is not a quiz, but it still timestamps it and gives me that ability to sort that spreadsheet. All right, so I have flown through a whole lot of stuff when it comes to Google Forms. I did not necessarily talk about embedding a video, but I did mention that you could do so. So basically, you would go in there, you could search for a video. So I could call it, let's see, look for a video on a particular topic. Could get some scare. Let's go with animal songs. That one makes me happy. So I can add that video, and then below it can have a lot of questions to do with the video itself. Or if I already have the URL for the video, then I can do that and search for it more specifically. All right, I do want to mention, I already went over all of the settings, but I do want to mention this 3-dot menu at the top. You can make a copy. So you can make multiple copies of the same quiz or survey and adapt it for your classes. So if you have multiple classes and you want to make copies of your test and send out different links, that way it's not all dumped in the same spreadsheet, you can do that. You can delete this. You can get a pre-filled link. This is really cool. I've not done this before, but I had a colleague show me. Get a pre-filled link, means that I can go in there and go ahead and fill in a few questions and then send that link out. So for example, if one of the questions from a district survey was your school name, and you're going to administer this to everybody in your school, you could go ahead and pre-fill that question with your school name. So it's a really cool thing. You can print, so a lot of people say, I need a printed copy. I need a copy of whatever. You can print it. Now, it does not print out efficiently. If you've ever tried this, it's going to be several pages, but you can do a hard copy of this. You can add collaborators, which is super helpful. This used to not be the case. So let's say that multiple fourth grade teachers are working on a benchmark test for fourth grade. All could be collaborating. You can, like I said, mention some add-ons. You can do some add-ons there. I haven't really worked with preferences. Oh, this is a really good one. If you want all questions to be required, you can check this box. This used to not be an option. Now you can do that. If you want all of your questions to be defaulted to 2 points, then now it automatically does that. That's a huge choice for teachers to not have to add that. You can still go in though and change those values on your own or make something not required, but I love that the preferences there at the bottom of the shish kebab menu lets you have that option. All right, I've been like, this is the lightning round of the boot camp. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say that this task will be a part of today's homework. So hopefully I haven't gone through it too terribly fast that would leave you with too many questions on Google Forms. Keep in mind, if you do need to book some additional time with me and you have some specific questions, you can do that through the link there on the homework page. I am recommending that you go through Units 3 and 4 in the Google Teacher Training Center. And whew, like that was a whole lot. Yesterday, I felt like we had extra time. Now, forms and sheets are just slam packed with information. So I'm just looking to see if there are any other questions in the chat. Anything else before I wrap us up and we've all hung out about 15 minutes later? All right, well, have a beautiful day. Enjoy this weather. Hopefully it cooperates with us all the rest of this week and I can do some more outside, and thankful nobody's cutting their grass today. So hopefully all of you can go in there and look at a couple of the videos that are embedded in the slides and review some of this because it's a lot of information. And if you do have questions, remember we do have that form that is for you to dump any questions that you want me to look at and maybe address first thing when we come back tomorrow. And I think that's it. All right, you guys have a great day, and I'll stay here for just a minute if you have any other questions. Enjoy the rest of your day.